meaning most profoundly, I think. You know, people people are sort of have reached the edge. We hear about people talk about eschatology. They're referring to reaching the edge of the universe, and that's really where we are. We're at the edge, not just of the physical universe, but of the spiritual universe that we've created for ourselves. And the only way to give birth to a new story, a new universe, is to tell a new story.
Absolutely, beautifully said. It does seem like everything's been said and done already many times over, and we've reached the end of the line, so to speak. And I know Terence McKenna used to talk about this period of time that's leading up towards about the 2012 period in being the increase in novelty, the absolute increase in novelty and in chaos at the same time.
Right.
So it's conceivable that we're at another moment of evolutionary leap, which has inexplicably happened according to scientists. They don't understand yet how we evolved, from one version of man to another. But we could be leaping into the next version because we're really just on the cusp of it would seem. And our worldview is really rather antiquated and antediluvian. I mean, it just doesn't work anymore.
Right. Yeah, Thomas Berry refers to it as a dysfunctional cosmology.
Yeah,
we don't have a cosmology that suits us, that fits the kind of fits our current situation, and it's less a problem of kind of absolute right and wrong. I think that worldviews change and evolve in time, just like life does, and there's kind of a right time though for the birth of something new, for birth of novelty, and it seems as though this is such a moment.
Well, yes, and of course, I'm sure you're aware of the various prophecies that are coming to an end, and the Mayan calendar with its end date of 2012 or 2011, if you prefer Kara Kalaman's view on that one.
Right.
And the numerous cosmic cycles that are coming to an end, the billions of year cycles that are, all seem to be simultaneously going around the odometer to zero. So, and we're also tipping into the other side of the galactic plane, which is an area we've never traveled before in our memory or as far as we know. And that could be a whole new experience in terms of dimensions opening up and communications with other civilizations and who knows what else. With the divine. I'd be happy if we could just reconnect with the planets and the sun and the solar system and the universe and the divine again.
What I think it really comes down to, at least for me, others may have more insight on this than I have, but I think for me, I'm comfortable with this, and I think kind of on a psychological level, this is sort of healthy to think this way. Is that we really just don't know what's happening, do we? I mean, there's a lot of unknown out there.
Right.
And if you look at human civilization, a great deal of human civilization has been about this very encounter with the unknown, an encounter between civilization and the wilderness. And we spend so much time trying to sort of fend off the wilderness. You could kind of think about patriarchy in that way. In a lot of ways, it's been sort of a process of paving over the wild. Right, of repressing the chaos. And there are kind of, legitimately practical reasons people have done that. The problem is what it's culminated in, I think, at this point, and this is why we're really at a shifting point now, is that we've paved it over to such an extent that on one hand we've compromised our ability to actually survive. Which is one problem. But even if we sort of aren't too bothered by that, I think what the real tragedy is that we paved over the wildness in ourselves, and in that process we sort of impoverished our experience of life. We're a little less alive, I think, in a paved over world than in a slightly wild one.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe I know that the left brain is the part that wants answers, and when it has them, then there's no point in looking any further for the mystery.
Right,
So,
right.
You know.
Yeah, it does. It has a lot to do, I think, with that kind of fragmentation, doesn't it? We want order. We want something logical. We want something that we can grasp and control, right? That is the left brain, right? And a little bit of that is okay. Some order, some control is fine and healthy and good. But too much of it can be a problem, and I think we're seeing both on a kind of cultural and psychological level, and also on a very ecological, physical level too. We're seeing the real problems with that.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know where it was originally said, but money is the root of all evil. It probably isn't too terribly far from the truth. You know, if we were on a resource-based economy rather than a monetary economy, then things would look a lot different. And
I think one. I mean, certainly. Wherever it was said, I mean, certainly it's as you said, not far from the truth, right? One of the issues around it is that it's an abstraction, isn't it? So you think about when you think about things in terms of monetary value, right? When we think about things in terms of a quantifiable number we can put on something, it really it obscures, I think, a lot of other ways to think about value. One of the things I'm interested in is education and thinking about how we educate people and what does it really mean to be an educated person. There's so much debate about about education, but not a lot of real nuanced discussion about what it actually means to be educated, because all of the discussion is around a kind of quantifiable number, right? Like a test score that makes a person educated. It's very similar, I think, when you think about the economy. I mean, the economy is an abstraction of some things that are very real and things that you can't actually put an exact number on, because if we think about what the world is comprised of, it's actually living beings, right? Everything that we're really buying and selling and trading, these are all living, and these are all part of ecosystems, and they're interconnected in highly complex ways and chaotic ways that we don't actually completely understand. And to put simple monetary value on them is just sort of an abstraction, and it takes them out of their context, and it obscures what the real value might be, which isn't entirely quantifiable at all.
Right. It seems that we move out of being organic beings that are interconnected to something that is lifeless, that is literally choking us to death with all of its machinations.
It really is. It really is. I mean,
we've become enslaved, basically. We've become enslaved.
What's that?
We've become enslaved.
Yeah, I think we really have, and we've become enslaved by a story that's not working in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a story that tells us, or at very least, of a metaphor. The metaphor that the universe is a machine, and that the universe consists of various fragmented, disconnected parts, rather than an organic whole. And the details of that are highly complex, and how to make that shift happen. But if we just look at that kind of core metaphor right there in the very beginning, that really is, so many of our problems can be traced to that metaphor.
Well, you mentioned that, and I was just recently reading a book, Not in His Image, and the Gnostics seem to believe that there was an inorganic form of life, the archons, that surreptitiously had some kind of viral control over the organic life. So it's not too far removed to think that there might be something operating beneath the surface that we're not actually aware of.
We have there's a few different. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely a lot of different ways to think about that. I tend to look at, and my own sort of personal theological view is what I would describe as panentheistic, which is that there is something spiritual in everything, and at the same time there's also a transcendent. So that the divine for me is something that's beyond everything, and at the same time is also within everything in the universe. What exactly does that look like? What how is something, what makes something sacred? What does that consist of? The best word that I have for it is imagination. And I think that if we look at, for example, we talked about Islam earlier. In the Sufi tradition, there's this notion that Ibn Arabi had that everything in creation was not God, but it was a part of God, and it was a part of the divine imagination. Mm-hmm. And that the way we sacralize the world is through our own imagination. Mm-hmm. And so it's this kind of twofold notion of imagination that Ibn Arabi in the Sufi tradition connects the kind of mundane world with the divine. And there are a lot of, there's sort of a lot of ways of thinking about that. And of course, if you look at the oldest human traditions, this is sort of a living world in which each human is not really separable from the ecosystem at all. Mm-hmm. That's, very much everything becomes divine in that way of thinking. The problem comes up when we start to think of a human world, or really a world that's just sort of in our own heads, and then everything else. And Descartes is probably the key figure in that process, the French Enlightenment philosopher, who posits that there's sort of an isolated ego that's separate from everything else, and it really gets us kind of, and St. Augustine too, if you want to go a little further back, when thinking about the soul and the divine as being separate from everything else in creation. How do we then get back to the sense of the planet, of the universe, of each of us, of other people, in fact, being imbued with some sort of sense of being sacred? How do we get back to that? I think it's a fundamental question for our species.
Oh, absolutely. Let me know if you have an answer to that one.
I have some suggestions, but an answer for that I think is I don't know. It's something that one person can come up with.
I don't either. I've pondered this a lot, and I keep coming back to the idea that it might require some kind of influx of divine light that reconnects everything at the mystical and spiritual levels and awakens us to our divine selves. But, whether that happens or not, that could be just my imagination.
Well, I mean, I think, it does, it's this sort of, what does the imagination do? The imagination brings forth something that is not yet present, right? So in each of us, if we really think about what it means to have a soul, having this capacity to create that which isn't yet present. And as we said before, the story, this new story that I'm suggesting we need, Thomas Berry really is the one who proposes this first. It's not there yet, and it's not something that I can do. I'm, as a poet, as a writer, I can participate in the process, but it's something that requires all of our poets, all of our writers, all of our painters, our musicians, our philosophers, all kinds of different people to come up with these new stories, right?
Absolutely.
It's an imaginative thing. It's so kind of, and I suppose it's typical that a politician would say this kind of thing, but our politicians always, sort of propose that we'll solve all of our problems through technology. And technology is useful. I'm not suggesting that no technology is good, but really what we need is the imagination much more than we need technology.
And technology is also becoming more invasive with the organic system of the human being. So, there are all kinds of potentials for positive and destructive things to occur once we start taking various technological devices into our brains, or having microchips in our system, and so on and so forth. It seems like a rather ominous moment in terms of the technology that's available.
It does, and I think it's naive for us to think that while I don't reject all technology, and we're talking on the phone here. The phone is rather useful, right?
Right.
That is the technology.
Right.
To accept without any question, though, everything new that comes up, and this is really where our culture is now, I think, is that everything is automatically assumed to be good and of value.
Yeah.
I think that's I think that's a dangerous way to proceed,
yes,
to say the least, as you suggest.